Sort of gives, you can see the psychological under one more chart, then I'll comment. Note this, like the moment of cycle, the crisis has reached its climax. I'm quoting you. In the vanguard, these are my underlines. Prepare to fight in the reserve and prepare to support the vanguard. Maximum consternation reigns and ranks the enemy. When you're reading this, you think about it, you say, well, that's a kind of a deal. Well, if you're a beneficiary of the system, things are going well for you, that's, but now it's pretend you're getting crapped on. No matter what you do, you're not making up. Well, all of a sudden, these things seem to have very large importance in your mind. You can organize people and do things. It's of much greater importance. He is rather cool, trying to show how the whole system is bankrupt before the part. That's true. Important crisis and vanguard. If the crisis, if the vanguard exacerbated, and start getting that feedback loop, start pulling the system down around its ear. Okay? So with that in mind now, let's look at what's big guerrilla strategy is as they can play together, then we're going to pull them apart. Because there's two things they do. Both of them play the infiltration or penetration isolation scheme. They do it at all levels. They also do it morally, mentally, and physically. I'll let you read this chart and I want to make some comments.
Summarize this. I can give most of the words.
I hate to read my chart.
Like, well, it helps wrap the letters.
Yeah, maybe that'll help. That help better?
Yeah.
Should have done it earlier.
I got an X-ray.
We're fine. Good camp, good camp. Look what they're doing. See, they're trying to disrupt the movie. Probe and test. Adversary and any allies around in order to unmask these things. And note this statement. Exploit critical difference of opinion, internal contradictions, frictions, etc. The idea is to foment mistrust and sow discord. In other words, so they can't function as an organic whole. We talk about fomenting mistrust and sow discord. In his system, you're trying to do what? Generate the non-proper centers of gravity. In other words, the inverse Clausewitzian notion again. Thereby, you create this kind of an atmosphere. And I'm quoting Adolf Hitler here. Mental confusion, contradiction of feeling, indecisiveness. Divided and just poured in there. They were afraid of it. And Czechoslovakia got the Allied Chamberlain or something to give the country away. Hope you read the history. And then against the Polish, they weren't even in a modern sense they would even compete against them in France. Of course, when he did, they were so pulled apart psychologically when he invaded, their armies came unglued. And all this crap you've been reading about their French resistance, you know, it's all coming out. That's a lot of that's myth. There's very few of them doing French resistance. Horrible collaborators. That's all beginning to come out. Of course, they couldn't let it come out before. So he must retain some honor and dignity. That's beginning to come out. So, but there may be a question here for some of you people who have read Mao, particularly Mao's treatise on protracted war. Let's say you don't want to be protracted. So you go, this is a paradox or a contradiction here. But you want to read that treatise. Mao says very explicitly, you want to have lightning engagements, lightning battles. The only reason for its protracted nature is because the guerrillas are weak. It's going to take time in order to build up their strength. But you don't want to get in and out and slug it out. It's in and out, in and out. So in that context, they agree. Okay, with that in mind, what I want to do now is I want to separate. We'll split it out. Well, first the blitzkrieg, and then the guerrillas. First blitzkrieg. This is my second most dense chart. Remember I told you when we get there. But I want to give you a flavor of what's going on. Here I'm referring to your intelligence operations, reconnaissance, and all those kind of things. The idea is to get an image of what's going on. Also to shape changing patterns of strengths, weaknesses, and impressions. You're going to use that. I want to find out what's going on to begin the shaping process on him. Then you want to use those patterns to change. To find out what are the alternatives, practical alternatives that you can employ against him. To help shape your mission, what I call mission commitment, influence your command intent. Then you start assigning missions to your own people. So here in a sense you have your observation, your orientation. Now you assign your mission. Your spare pump, what we'll talk about here in a minute, very important idea. It's not just a physical thing, it's a moral mental kind of thing too. The idea is to duck his strength and go for his weakness. What I use the word naming pump to the other parts, like a modern chain. So you tie them up here so you can exploit elsewhere. And then you hear about these modern times now. They talk about the Soviet Spetsnaz teams, you know, those infiltration teams they talk about. The Germans had them too. There's Brandenburg Regiment, later on Skorzenny's group. They call special seizure and disruption teams. They infiltrate your adversary system. Go in a very area. And they do these kinds of things. In other words, start pulling his connections apart inside his system so it can't function as an organic whole. So confusion, disorder. And then, of course, your firepower is going to be. Then your armored reconnaissance and your stormtrooper team. In other words, infiltrating, finding out those paths of least resistance, and finding your assault teams with tanks, infantry, and so on, pouring through on multiple paths. And when the breakthrough occurs, of course, they go through in order to try to cut their communication, lines of communication, develop their forces. So what you begin to see here is there are a number of activities taking here, numbers of happenings. But with all these things taking place, it's very difficult for the adversary to sort out what's going on in order to deprive him from realizing the purpose. Very difficult. Multiple things happening. The idea is quite simple. I think that answers your question, right? The idea is quite simple. Okay? But it does. Here's an impression it leaves you with. The idea, if you start thinking about that, what you're really doing, Blitzkrieg generates many non-cooperative centers of gravity. See, they're pouring in, they're just generating all these non-cooperative centers of gravity, so the enemy organism can't function as organic whole. So, starts magnifying the structure. That's what you want to do, generate non-cooperative centers of gravity, or isolated center of gravity, the adversary system, but can't function. Provide one another necessary mutual support. So it raises a rather interesting question. How do blitzers simultaneously sustain rapid pace and abruptly adapt to changing circumstances? Without losing their own cohesion. Because if you try to go rapid, you can't adapt. You adapt and you can't penetrate deep, so there are opposing tendencies. Another thing, you give everybody a lot of freedom of action down below, their blitzkrieg flies apart. You try to constrain their activities, then they can't blitz. With too much top-down command and control. Another opposing tendency. In other words, we got some opposing tendencies. How do we resolve these opposing tendencies? Same thing you have in campaign. resolve these opposing tendencies. So let's take that on. And here's what I call blitz operating philosophy. And the key point you have to keep in mind, each level, from simple to complex, from platoon all the way up to theater, they all have their own rules for observation, orientation, decision, time cycle rules. The thing you have to keep in mind is you go up to higher level, the loop goes slower and slower and slower. More to keep track of. If you're down lower, you can operate at a faster tempo. In other words, as the number of events we must consider increase, the longer it takes to go through those. This brings out the idea that faster tempo rhythm at lower level should work within a slower rhythm or larger pattern at higher level. In other words, so the system doesn't start coming apart. So how do you harmonize these different tempos of rhythm? Now, first point, it's a little vague. I'm going to fill it in here in a minute. You want to give lower level commanders wide freedom within an overall mind time space scheme. Everybody can agree. Whether it's the higher level or the lower level. Whether you want to call it a common outlook, common frame of reference, whatever you want to call it. That's one point. You begin to get the idea. We're not there yet. Another thing, what I call shaping agents. You shape overall scheme by using what we call a mission concept and also their Schwerpunkt concept. They use a mission concept. You sometimes see it today advocated what we call off-block tactic. I think that's where it gets us away from it a little bit. And the Schwerpunkt was going to get into. So these different tempos and rhythms don't start pulling one another apart in their own system. Okay, so with that in mind, raise this question. What the hell do we mean by an overall mind time space? What does it imply or presuppose? How do the mission and Schwerpunkt concepts give shape to this overall scheme? We're going to take that on in order. First, what does that imply or presuppose? And this is very important. I'll let you read it and I'll comment on it. Now, General Blumentritt was a general during World War II in Germany. And I'm quoting him. Presuppose a common outlook based upon, quote, the body of professional officers, etc. And those are his underlines, not mine. Officers training is freedom. Allows subordinates a great measure of freedom of action, freedom of manner, and executing order. Calls for independent daring, initiative, etc. Look at this point. Without a common outlook, officers cannot give subordinates freedom of action and maintain coherency. Ongoing action. Well, let's assume you don't have a common outlook. You give people freedom of action. First thing's going to dissolve away. And so if you don't have people who have a common outlook, then what are you going to be forced to do? You're going to have very top-down, centralized command and control. I'll get into a little deeper in a few minutes. I don't want to take it too far right now. But if you don't have a common outlook, then if you give freedom of action, it all dissolves away. So you have to have that preceded by a common outlook. So the implication is rather clear. Now, when he used the word a body of officers, what that means in the German system, they're talking about general staff. That's body of officers. He's referring to a particular body, general staff. Code word for general staff, I guess is what I'm saying. Code word. So think about that. You cannot get freedom of action out of common outlook, otherwise it dissolves when you fail. When that's a little deeper here. Okay, so it raises this question. How do the concepts of mission and Schwerpunkt give shape to this? Let's take on mission first. Here's an important idea. Think of it as a contract or an agreement between superior and subordinate. Subordinate agrees to make his action serve as superior's intent in terms of what is to be done. In other words, superior determines what is to be done. The subordinate determines how it's going to be carried out. How it's going to be carried out. In other words, it gives them the freedom to exercise imagination in terms of how intents to be realized. Note the second bullet. Many Americans have a hard time coming to grips with. Part of this concept, the board is given the right to challenge or question the feasibility of mission. In their system, the Prussian system, they had the right to challenge that mission before the decision was made. If he feels his ideas what can be achieved are not accorded with the decision. On the other hand, once he agrees, then Superior has every right to expect this to be carried out. There is a limitation. Remember, while this concept of mission gives form and expression, it is not successfully subordinate. Remember, if you're a superior, let's say you give somebody a mission or a task down below, you have other subordinates. You give them an independent task. They have to know how they're going to glue and work with the others. And that's where the spearphone concept comes in. I'll show you in a minute. So you have more than one subordinate or one superior. You have to glue it all together. Make it work as a whole. So, how does spearphone play into this? So let's give you a feel for the spearphone. So the spearphone acts as a center or acts as a harmonizing agent. In other words, you say this, the spearphone will be in this direction. Here's our spearphone. It gives focus and direction. Normally we call focus the main effort of focus, sometimes it's used to help shape commitment, carry out, and at all levels, theater down to platoon. In other words, the spearphone at theater level, Army group, Army, Corps, Division, Regiment, Battalion, Company, platoon. Spearphone inside spearphone, inside spearphone, inside spearphone. Know what it says. More specific. So when I'm going to be, let's say I'm going to be a battalion commander, I want to lay down some tasks for my subordinate commander. They'll say the spearphone will be in this area, following units are affected. So they know that when they lay the task down below, I don't tell them how to do anything. This is what I want done. Here's the mission. Here's the spearphone. So, in region, you'll designate an outfit being the spearphone. They pass right on down. They have to individual. In fact, some of the people I work with, they always say, what's a spearphone for operation here? Who's going to do the spearphone? Where's the focus? The other people, keep the focus, find the other people support them. Even though they're doing different things, they always keep in mind with that focus, unless you shift. What's the focus? The operation. So you think of it as a focusing aid, or a medium to realize that. The implication is it is a unifying concept or a unifying medium. Okay? Now let's sort of tie it all together. I want to talk this chart a little bit. It's sort of a key idea. Sort of opposite in the sense of the way we think of things. So to sort of tie it all together, what you're really saying, their operating philosophy based on a common outlook, freedom of action, realizing these concepts we talked about, mentioned concepts. And the key thing is to emphasize implicit over explicit communication. Which suggests the secret of the German command and control lies in what's unstated or not communicated to one another. In other words, instead of laying down detailed orders, the secret lies in what's unstated. Let me give you a feel for that as a fighter pilot in our context. When I used to be an instructor out in the 50s out of Dallas, when you start instructing pilots tactics, air tactics, you're going against other adversaries. First thing they do, they start talking, jabbering all the time on the radio. Not only that, their communications going at a slower pace beyond rushing events, so the whole thing dissolves away in confusion and chaos. So then you got to work with them over and over and show them under what situation, what you're going to do, and you work with them. So eventually, you say the key idea is when you go up there, you don't say anything. You be able to anticipate my moves, I can anticipate yours. Of course, that's mental telepathy. You can't quite do that. But then when you utter a word, it's like a code word. It's dripping in information. You know exactly what you're doing, what you're not going to do. You don't have all this conversation. So it's that implicit communication, the unstated communication that you have. And now your communication is going quicker than the oncoming events, so now you can stay ahead of the oncoming events. Instead of the events taking you out, you're taking them out. unstable. Well, now if you work together for a long period of time, you know where you work for a long period of time, you give one word, they know what to do. If you haven't, then you gotta lay out detailed instructions. To get to lay out detailed instructions, it takes longer. Plus, there's probably gonna be a goof later on anyway, you have to modify it, which stretches it even further. So that common outlook is very important, because what that common outlook really is are shared images or views for those kinds of things that you're trying to work together on. You worked it out before. And if you don't have it, and you try to say, go to it, Tiger, boy, expect a disaster, you're probably going to get one. Because really what you're doing, how do you get a common outlook? If you don't have those implicit connections or bonds, there's no common outlook. Those shared images, those shared views, those shared impressions, there's no common outlook. Without any common outlook, you can't get freedom of action. They all play together. Instead, you have to have a very detailed, top-down command approach. Rigidity, time-consuming nature, etc. But if you have it the other way, you can depend upon it. So you don't have to communicate. Then what you do, you diminish that friction and reduce the time, as well as gain both quickness and security. Because if you don't talk very much, the other guy's listening in for eavesdropping communication, he doesn't have much to work on. In fact, I remember one historian noticed that in some of the German, some of the archives, that has some British talking about this. A German unit came into the field, they noticed it, didn't know what was going on. Further, now note this, multiple narrow thrust, I have that there. Let's discuss that. It raises a rather interesting question. We talked about it before. And we're tending to show it in a physical sense, but also as a mental sense, too. Why do you want to employ multiple thrusts, or bundles of multiple thrusts, or bundles of thrust inside bundles of thrust? And the typical way people like to respond to that, well, you know, it's for flank protection. Yeah, but that's not a way to think of it. There's a much better way to think of it.